To preface and give some context, I'm a 21-year-old male who makes a bit of a habit of taking road trips across the US, and I'm not one who is inexperienced when it comes to hiking or dangerous situations. I've had people stalk my camp in Kansas and stare over my fire in Utah with a shotgun. Point being, I've had weird experiences, but none that have ever chilled me like this one. This just happened earlier today, and I want to get it out there while the image is still sharp in my mind. I was out hiking a trail in southern Indiana with a female friend of mine. It was around 90 degrees and muggy as all get out. The trail specifically is the Three Lakes Trail, and it's a little over 10 miles long and is circular, so nearly impossible to get lost. We had arrived early in the morning, and so there was almost no one in the park at all, save for a few parked vehicles. We had been hiking the trail for just about 3 hours and not seen a soul. Usually I pay attention to my surroundings a bit more, and I am cautious of people just because of life experiences and this subreddit. But with good conversation and laughs, I was distracted. My friend and I are walking downhill towards a sharp left turn when out of seemingly nowhere, a woman steps around the bend and starts hiking up the hill toward us with her head down. She was of average height, but much more muscular than a typical woman. She's wearing a sports bra, short shorts, and a backpack, which left most of her body exposed. Her tattoos are what first caught my eye. All across her body are these weird shapes and symbols that didn't make much sense. I didn't see anything that resembled a picture or English words. As she came within about 10 feet of us, she looked up and we made eye contact. That is when everything in me just froze up. Her face had similar symbols tattooed all over and in strings all over her face. Her eyes, though, are what I'll remember for a long time. They were just black sockets, and in the shade of the dense canopy, I couldn't make out much about what it actually was. With how humid it was that day, I don't believe that the dark sockets were makeup, and so I assumed that all around her eyes were tattooed solid black. On top of this, she must have had colored contacts in her eyes, as there was no white at all. With every horror and cult scenario I've ever heard running through my mind, and her face chilling me to the soul, I blurt out, "Good day for a hike." She just looks at me with this empty stare, holds eye contact, and walks by us. I've never been so shaken up from running into someone out on a trail before, and I hope to never see something like that again. When I was a junior in college, my friend invited me to attend a ballet with her and a teenage girl she knew from back home. The girl was part of an educational advancement program that had placed her in a nearby high school and provided a free room and board in a group home with other students. All of her housemates had gone home for fall break, so my friend thought it would be nice to take her out for a girls' night away from the big empty house, with only her program advisor for company. It was about midnight when we got back from the ballet. Since we were in possession of a 16-year-old overdue for curfew, it seemed important to get her home as quickly as possible. The girl's house was fairly close to a student shuttle stop on the far end of campus, so we figured we'd walk her home before doubling back. While moving up a footpath that leads into town, we realized her house backed up to the arboretum on the edge of campus. Rather than walk all the way around, we decided to cross the arboretum. We didn't have flashlights, but my friend's iPhone flash could serve in a pinch, and the stretch of woods was sandwiched between the brightly lit window of our dorms and those of the houses across the way. Several minutes into our hike, we lost sight of the footpath and the dorms. It was much darker now, and my friend was less certain we were walking the right way, so we paused to check our location. As we were all huddled, motionless, around my friend's phone, we heard a twig crack behind us. We turned around to find a young woman, presumably a student, standing a few yards away. Her hoodie was pulled up over her head, obscuring most of her face. She seemed enormous, but given that I'm 5'3" and was flanked by 2 5-foot ballet dancers, the threshold for enormity was low. She was silent for a moment, then asked us where we were going. "We're heading into town," my friend answers. "Where are you going?" "What do you need in town?" the woman asks. "We're taking her home," and my friend pointed to the teenage girl. "Where does she live?" "Not too far. Where are you going?" my friend replied. "Do you know how to get there?" the woman asked, and she started to walk closer to us. The teenage girl grabbed a fistful of my coat and inched closer to me. "Yeah, we figured it out. Are you going toward campus or into town?" my friend asked. "Which way is it?" "Her house," the woman asked. She was now within a few feet. Her approach had slowed, but not yet stopped. My friend quickly blurted out, "Just this way. Good night." She was bluffing, but any direction away from this student seemed like the right direction, so we went along. The plan was a failure. Within seconds, I could hear her crunching the leaves just behind me. She was following close enough to touch me, and I sped up, certain I was about to get a knife in my spine if I didn't get away. When my friend saw me rushing, she turned back to see the student following us. She grabbed the teenager's hand, and the three of us began to run. We never turned back, so I'm not sure how long the student followed. Eventually, we figured out we were running the right way when the teenager yelled out, "That's it," and led us to a driveway where we could huff and puff ourselves back to normal under a garage-mounted floodlight. The girl's program advisor was home, waiting up for her missing ward, and made each of us a cup of tea while we waited for the campus police to drive out and escort my friend and I back to our dorm. Once safely in the back seat of a college security vehicle, we told the officer why we'd wanted a ride instead of walking back. He said this was the third time this semester that they'd picked up students running scared from the woods after encountering a strange girl in a hoodie. They dispatched officers to look into it before, but they never found anyone. He figured it was a student on a stroll from the dorms, and that we had nothing to worry about. As soon as we got out of the car, my friend got a text from the teenager. She was certain she'd seen that student outside her window, but when the program advisor went out to investigate, no one was there. I never found out what happened, but I really hope the creepy girl in the woods is not the same student whose body was found out there a year later. I hope she has nothing to do with that at all. When I was about 8, my family and I were on a road trip and decided to stop at a rest stop. I walked back to the car with my mom, my older sister, and my little sister, who was only a few months old at the time. My older sister was carrying my little sister when she suddenly tripped on the sidewalk. Luckily, she was able to catch herself by landing on her knee to keep from dropping my little sister. As we were helping them up, a woman came up the sidewalk from out of nowhere. She reached out towards my older sister, her eyes wide as she desperately said, "Here, give me the baby." My mother and sister calmly told her they were fine, and the woman walked away without saying anything else to us. I'm not sure if the woman had any real intentions of taking my little sister, but something about the way she reached out for her felt very unsettling. Traveling out of state for a vacation with my kids. At a gas station, this man starts trying to talk to my young daughter. I immediately got between them, but not before my daughter blurted out exactly where we were going and how long we would be there. I suddenly felt sick. Something about the guy scared me. I just knew there was going to be a problem. I hustled the kids back to the car and waited to drive away out of fear he might follow us. I didn't see him come out, so eventually I drove off, but I was paranoid about it afterward. 2 days later, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone banging aggressively on our door. He was screaming that he was with security for the complex and that there was an intruder seen in the area, so I was required by law to open the door. Obviously, I didn't fall for that. He started swearing and threatening me. Suddenly, he just stopped. Something suddenly spooked him, and he turned and bolted. He had been standing kind of off to the side and reaching over to bang on the door in a way I couldn't see his face. When he moved, I saw it. It was the guy from the gas station. He followed us through 2 states. The actual security for the complex drove around, but never found him. There was a broken gate next to the condo that they said he got in through. Hey guys, so we went for a hike with my boyfriend for his birthday today. We're not very superstitious people, but we were quite anxious the whole time. We didn't meet anyone on the road, and I was feeling weird. I was thinking, I know we're gonna meet someone, but that someone I wasn't chill about. My boyfriend was a bit nervous, which is unusual of him, as he's very used to hiking pretty much anywhere. So we're 4+ hours into the hike, and we're nearly at the end. There was some sort of cabin in the forest, and a guy looking like Tom Hanks in Castaway was there. He jumped out of his cabin, naked, with a knife, and he began to make grunts. I told my boyfriend he had a knife, and the guy starts to run to us. My boyfriend told me to run, go, and I tried to do my best, as I'm not the most sporty girl. I believe I fell a few times because I have a lot of scratches and a bump on my shin, but I didn't feel it at the moment. After running for what felt like forever to escape him, we finally found a way out to a neighborhood, and then to a road. We felt so relieved. My question is though, we were in shock and really traumatized by it. Do you guys feel like it's a serious event, or is it not that big of a deal? I know that it might sound stupid to ask, but we really don't know anymore. Maybe we were overreacting. We did report this person to the police, by the way, and they're supposed to go over to that place, but we're not sure if they're going to take their time or not, considering how far out it was. I recently went to Costa Rica with my 2 kids and baby daddy. All was well until my nightmares started. We had a large suite, my daughter and I in the master, and my baby daddy with my son in another room on the opposite side of the suite. The first nightmare I had was so vivid of my room that I swear I was reliving someone's last moments. It started with going to the hardware store and buying rope. This was a heavy-set male with long, curly hair. His demeanor was calm, but oddly distant. In my dream, I woke up, went to my closet, and found a man hanging there with a note filled in the frame of his glasses. It was like I was a worker who had found him and was trying to cut him down. Before he was released, his body turned to me, and he smiled. I immediately woke up. After that really fucked up dream, I was pretty terrified to go back to sleep. When I did, I had a weird looming feeling. Turns out, the next few nights, I would see a man standing at the entry to my room, move about, sit on the edge of my bed, and just exist. My daughter and I both saw this man. She's 16 months old and sat straight up and waved to say hello in the middle of the night in pitch black. Yeah, so Bob's Burgers and Finding Nemo was on repeat all night until we left. I never told my baby daddy. He would have blamed it on other things and gaslighted me. So this was me sharing my weird trip. The beach was fun. The hotel was for sure haunted. About 2 years ago, my best friend slash college roommate went on a road trip to New Orleans. It was a really good time, great city, and I can't wait to go back. Anyway, we were driving home to Illinois and we were in Mississippi. We stopped in a small town called Magnolia to get some gas. Next to the gas station, there was a sign for a historical marker, a Confederate cemetery. Both of us, being born and raised north of the Mason-Dixon line and having an interest in history, we decided to go check out the cemetery. We arrived at the cemetery and parked the car and were wandering around and reading the different tombstones and taking pictures. It's always sort of interesting to see the other point of view when you've grown up hearing all about the North. As we were walking down a row of Confederate soldiers' graves, we noticed a car pull up into the cemetery. I didn't really think much of it. Maybe they were tourists like us and wanted to check out the Confederate cemetery. The car pulled up right behind mine and stayed running. Inside of their car were about 3 guys. Okay, whatever. My friend and I do think it's a bit strange that they're just sitting in their car watching us. But when we went on looking at some more graves, then we noticed another car enter the cemetery and loop around the opposite direction of the first car. This car was an SUV. I think it was a Chevy Trailblazer or something like that, and I noticed both vehicles had Mississippi plates, and both had 3 guys in them. The SUV pulled up in front of my car, so essentially, my car was blocked by these 2 vehicles. My friend and I are thinking, what the fuck? And we're getting pretty creeped out, so we head towards the car and try not to make eye contact. As we approach my car, one of the guys gets out, and he's a big guy. He just stares us down as we get into my car. As soon as we're in my car, I lock the doors. The car behind us is still running, and the guys are just staring. The guy from the SUV is standing outside of it with a blank look on his face. It was pretty unnerving. I don't even remember how many times I backed up and went forward in my car to be able to swing around the SUV and drive off. But as soon as I was able to pass it, we flew the hell out of there and didn't stop until we were into Arkansas. So, what those guys wanted, I have no idea, but we really didn't want to find out. So, guys in the Confederate cemetery in Magnolia, Mississippi, let's not meet again. "3 days ago, my old man went out of town. The first night, I heard what I assumed was a large critter. As of 4:13 a.m. when I post this, I think they're gone for good. This is a long but recent and true story. I want to say I'm glad they left, or knew I was armed and not worth dying over or killing, whatever reason. 2 nights ago, I was awoken by my dog between 11 and 3 a.m. at most. He kept near me when I got up and made a low, aggressive growl facing out of my room, but he kept close to me. He has never done this before. I've worked with canines for years. This gave me a gut feeling, and then I heard it. Someone talking. In my yard, no more than 20 feet away by the sound. Low mumbling / bad whispering. I was blaring Return of the King, yes, extended. I need to add that I have childlike hearing at my age for context. If you speak in a 1-floor home with 2 doors closed at a whisper, I can make words out. He went quiet when I opened a drawer too loud to grab my hidden .380, chambered around, and noticed a shadow passing by light outside the blurred window. Blackout curtains for the wind. The home was clear, all doors locked. Nothing odd, but my dog peeled out. I held my flashlight in one hand, went my dog's way, and called him to the other side. The person was gone. I guess they knew I was home and ran on foot. I went around but thought, okay, I'm good. Well, Florida continues to be Florida. Night 3, my dog does this again in the same frame, waking me up, At this rate, I just got the 12 gauge. My dog was acting far more protective and gave me the dog body language for major threat, need the pack, cannot handle alone. I froze for a moment. 2 people now. Fuck, this isn't good. They must intend to violently take whatever they could be after. There was one new guy with guy number 1. I can't risk getting a look. At this rate they mean business and had to be armed to scope out a place with a ring, the 60 pounds plus of muscle of a dog, and my grown ass with a lifetime of handling guns in the yard around 2:30 a.m. for a second night. They knew I and my dog were home, but clearly had a goal. This time, voices were behind the home. My dog pulled a fucking Leroy Jenkins. He gave the most aggressive loud bark I've ever heard any dog do, and ran to the wall. I ran to his side, yelled, "Fuck 'em up, they're dead men." Now shit's clicking for me. This was planned and professional. I checked every inch of the property with the shotgun. My dog was worked up and spooked, but calm. I'm buying him a steak for this one, and a good one. I went inside. I kept that gun on me, chambered and in reach of my bed. I barely slept. Day number 4, I did a bit of looking around for misplaced/slightly moved objects or scratched locks. Yeah, one trash can by the gate was rotated 180 degrees. The handle was now facing me and not the wall, as it's usually placed that way. There were a few crushed dead twigs as I went back. The head chair was turned and moved to the right. A clearly odd thing, as that table set is symmetrical, so it's obviously out of place if you lived there. The ring and my neighbors so far show nothing, but I knew these guys had to have known my father left, knew that his son lives there, the dog would eat them and is huge, that I had a firearm and even announced that I was armed. Yet they came back with backup. Then the guy came with backup, moved stuff I didn't know about until my Marine buddy told me to check if so much as a rock was out of place. It's a way to gauge the person's awareness/presence, I guess. Whatever your goal was, let's not meet. For an update, I am safe and prepared, and I have armed neighbors that I gave a heads up to. I'm working on a police report and looking at good cameras/motion detectors with lights. 2 days without any disturbances. It's 5:30. I'm leaving for work, and I have the neighbors watching the home and have secured the gate. I've secured the doggy door for the dog too. This happened about 6 to 7 years ago when I was still in college. I live in a small gated community with a couple of security guards manning the gate. 1 or 2 people would be assisting the guards, and we were able to distinguish them from the guards as they would wear uniformed shirts. Sometimes they were also the ones who patrol the streets. For context, there's a bus stop right on the corner of our subdivision, a few steps past the gate. Guards have a clear view of the bus stop. My house is a 5 to 7 minute walk from the gate. I always walk to the bus stop on my way to school, and one day, I noticed this new assistant, but I thought nothing of it because the assistants change every so often. When I got to the bus stop, I had this weird feeling that someone was staring at me. I looked back, and true enough, this new guy, Red, was staring intently at me. I managed to smile awkwardly, and his expression didn't change. I thought, nah, and went on with my day. Every morning as I walked to the bus stop, he would be near the gate to greet me good morning. I greeted back and smiled. Again, I didn't think anything of it, as some of our older guards were like that. Summer break came, so I had friends over almost every day, and we would usually hang out at our garage. My friends were mostly guys. I saw Red on his bike passing our house and looking at my guy friends suspiciously. I thought that was weird, and saw him again after a while, this time looking very angry at them. My friends noticed this and laughed it off. He did this about 3 times that day, and my friends teased that Red may have a crush on me, but told me to be really careful. This went on for weeks, him shooting daggers with his eyes directed at my guy friends whenever they would come over, or fetch me, or even walk me home. I would notice him sometimes passing by my house, looking intently through the gates, as if to check if there were people over. He would sometimes pop up behind us while we were walking, on his bike, unabashedly staring at us angrily. He would always circle around my friends and I while we were walking around the subdivision. His bike would be facing and moving forward, but his head would always be turned towards us. He always said nothing, and that made us all the more uncomfortable. One night, the whole community experienced a blackout, so all street lights were out. I loved that I could see the moon and stars so clearly. I was walking home from the bus stop. Then Red appeared beside me, carrying a huge-ass flashlight, and carried my box of Krispy Kreme donuts for me without asking me. I tried to get it back from him, but he insisted. I wanted to enjoy my night walk alone, but he was there, shining his light everywhere. I insisted I was fine to walk home alone at night, but he insisted to still walk me back. Me, being polite and naive at the time, just sighed and let him be. He talked about himself, and I wasn't really listening, so I can't really remember anything of what he said. When we reached my house, I thanked him nonchalantly and got my Krispy Kreme back. My dad was waiting for me on the front porch, as he usually does when he knows I'll be home late, and he saw Red. He asked what the fuck he was doing walking me home. I said I don't know, maybe because the streetlights were out, but I mentioned that he was very insistent. He just hummed suspiciously and followed me inside our house. My dad asked me how it happened, and I told my dad all about Red holding the box of donuts for me without my permission, and the numerous incidents with my friends. My dad was furious that I only just told him about all that. I recounted everything to him in detail, and he told me that Red would not bother me again. True enough, I never saw him again. I don't know what my dad told him or if he reported him to his superiors, but I never saw him again. I asked my dad what he did to Red, but my dad just said that he had a word with Red. So, creepy and angry stalker guard on a bike, let us never meet again. On Tuesday, the 22nd of February, 2022, I had a person come into my job. I work in women's clothing, and it was a customer I'd helped on 3 occasions over the last 8 months. They said they were a man with he/him pronouns, but his girlfriend liked it when he dressed up in women's clothing. I didn't find anything wrong with this, because I enjoy helping people feel good about themselves. I asked if this was consensual, and he said yes. He enjoyed it too. On this particular day, he came in, this time with a wig and a dress on, which again, I found no issue with. In fact, I felt proud of him. He asked for the fitting room once no one was in the store, and asked for my opinions on something he was wearing. I agreed. He opened the fitting room door and was standing there with a blouse on and no pants, but he was wearing a pink and white polka-dotted diaper. I was shaken and uncomfortable, but maintained my composure, and said the top was cute and turned away. He tried on another outfit and was fully clothed this time, and asked if we had anything shorter, because his girlfriend likes it when he gets a pedicure and the lady doing his toes can see the diaper. I grew more and more uncomfortable, but being alone, I didn't say anything other than, "Oh, that's interesting." He asked if we had any long skirts that could be used as a dress, and I said yes and went to go fetch them. I came back, and one by one, he came out in the tops with his diaper showing, and even told me a story about him peeing himself at a sex store, and his girlfriend changed his diaper in front of the employees who were turned on by this. The discomfort grew and grew until I was shaking and texting my coworker to come in early. He comes out of the fitting room in the dress he came in with and turned away and acted like he was on the phone. However, I noticed it was a calculator instead. I stood there trying to calm down and everything when he comes back and says his girlfriend gave him the task of taking a photo with me in his bra and diaper. I declined and said I wasn't okay with that. He said that it was okay, but he was going to get a spanking from her later. He left shortly after, thanking me for my help, but not purchasing anything, which was a first. I brushed the experience off as a weird occurrence and went on about my day, thinking I wouldn't see him for a few more months again. I went home later that day, and my coworker texted me saying he was back and doing the same thing to her. But he left again without making a purchase. The next day, I asked my coworker to come in early so I wasn't alone, and she did. He came in again, and I went to the back because I was about to have a panic attack. I felt sexually harassed simply just looking at him and picturing the look he had when he was staring at me in the diaper. I overheard him asking my coworker my name and when I would be working again. She didn't give him either, and he left after making a purchase on a blouse he tried on the day before. My coworker told me he identifies as she, which threw me off since it contradicted what he told me the day before. At this point, I filed a report with the police. I genuinely think this is a ploy to traffic me. An officer comes to talk to me, and I tell him everything. The next day, I was off of work, and I get a call from my coworker saying he drove by looking into the store. And when my coworker caught him staring, he drove away. I went to the police station since I had to drop off my statement and informed them on what had happened. The next day, I opened the store and had to go by the bank. When I was driving to the bank, I noticed his truck outside an auto parts store. I called the investigator and told him about this, and he got a tag number and noticed he had a sticker for a local campsite that expires Monday. It's February. Who the fuck is camping in February by a lake? All in all, I feel good knowing more about him than he knows about me. I know his name, where he works, and that he's got a campsite until the Monday. I didn't see him the day before or today. I'm hoping he got the message that he scared the fuck out of me. I'll keep you updated as this goes on. For context, I'm a 25-year-old female. I'm 5'2". The person discussed in this post is about 6'5", 350 pounds, late 30s to mid 40s. Hopefully this will shed some light on why I was worried to call this person out on their shit while I was alone. And for an update, he came in today while I was working and the cops were called. He's been banned from the store, and if he comes back, he will be arrested. If anything else happens, I'll be sure to inform you. Thank you all for listening and giving words of encouragement. I appreciate it more than you could ever know. I'm proud to have stood my ground today for my store and my employees. No one should ever have to go to work and be in fear for the sake of customer service. Fuck any creep who utilizes customer service as a way to sexually harass people who just want to put food on the table. Again, I thank each of you so much. Several years ago, I worked at a crisis unit for the acutely mentally ill. It was a 10-bed unit where individuals would come to stay as a step-down from a psychiatric hospitalization or a diversion to prevent psychiatric hospitalization. I often worked alone on the weekends. One Friday evening, we received an admission. Michael. Background information was provided with a referral, indicating a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder and recent release from prison after serving a sentence for murder. I completed the initial intake meeting with Michael, during which time he said some sexually explicit things to me. I made it clear that this was inappropriate and that confidentiality was limited and that the staff working on the unit as part of his treatment team would be privy to anything he said in the interview or subsequent one-on-one sessions. He responded well to the redirection. We finished the intake, and I went about the rest of my shift until about 11 p.m. that night, when he approached the office and asked if I was working alone. Luckily, at the time, I wasn't alone, and I told him that my male coworker was in the adjoining office. After this encounter, I explained the situation to my coworker, who read my shift summary and decided to sit down with Michael and tell him that the way he was acting was not acceptable and that he could risk being released from the program if it continued. The next morning, I was working alone from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Around 9 a.m., I went to wake up another client, Jeremy, to administer his medications. The room Jeremy was assigned was at the end of the hallway, and he was usually slow to get up in the mornings. While I was knocking on Jeremy's door, Michael approached me to tell me that he didn't appreciate that I'd shared the things he said to me with my male coworker. I explained to Michael that he knew what he said was inappropriate and that he knew anything he said to me would be shared with the rest of the treatment team. Michael became more agitated and got in my face, backing me into the corner in front of Jeremy's bedroom door. At this point, Jeremy had woken up and heard what was happening outside his room. Jeremy came out of his room, stood between Michael and myself, and told Michael that he needed to walk away and cool down. Michael went back to his room, and I contacted my supervisor, who told me to document the encounter and continue my shift. Needless to say, I left that job shortly after this incident. I'm thankful for Jeremy, and that he had the presence of mind, while also being a client with a mental illness, to intervene on my behalf. I often wonder what would have happened if Jeremy wouldn't have woken up, or if he would have been in a more severe state of mental illness and would have become agitated as well. So, Michael, let's never meet again. A creepy man somehow gets my number through Instagram. I used to have my profile on private to avoid creepy encounters like this. I put it back on public after a while because of a rally I attended and wanted to put my name out there. One day, I received a text message to my number. He claimed to be a man that saw me on Instagram, thought I was beautiful, and wanted to get to know me more. At first, I thought it was just some sick joke one of my friends was pulling on me, but I quickly realized it most likely wasn't, because an older man followed me shortly before that text. I didn't see it before because I have my notifications for Instagram off. I was skeptical and asked him how he even got my number in the first place, and that I thought it was really weird. He claimed he got it off of my Instagram, off of my email somehow. But I checked my email. My signature doesn't have my contact information. But that wasn't the only flaw in his claim. I don't have any of my personal information displayed on my Instagram, in no way, shape, or form. He proceeded to keep texting me, introducing himself really specifically, as if we were texting on a dating app, saying he was a woman's doctor and whatnot. As creeped out as I was, I didn't want to be rude and tick him off. So I politely asked he block my number or get rid of it, because I wasn't interested in being friends or getting to know a man in his 50s that gave me a flimsy idea of how he even got my contact information. The conversation went on with him carrying a lot of it and me repeatedly declining his weird and extremely creepy offer. He continued to glorify my ethnicity, culture, and looks, attempting to try to connect with me in some way or another. Eventually, I got really tired of it and started to tell him I would call the cops and report his number if he does not stop texting me. He passively aggressively threatened me, telling me, "You're going to regret that," bouncing back and forth between that and being passive, saying, "I'm just trying to get to know you better. Please give me a chance. I get lonely. I may be old by age, but everyone says I have the heart of a 19-year-old. I eventually stopped answering, and at this point, I'd already gotten some advice from my friends to block the guy on everything. Hope he was only bluffing in his passive-aggressive threats, and that he was just some desperate old man. From then on, I usually take an extra look around me before entering my car, going out, being more careful on social media and whatnot. It was mostly just terrifying how stubborn, unwilling, and aggressive he was towards me, telling him no, and that I was not interested, and how I still don't even have a solid way in knowing how he obtained any of my information. About 10 years ago, I was fresh out of college and trying to figure out what was next. I went to college on an athletic scholarship, and I was just as interested in enjoying my college experience as I was in completing it. I ended up with a communications degree, average grades, and no experience. I was working as a bouncer at a small bar/lounge in a casino. I worked at said bar from Wednesday to Sunday from around 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. My job was to greet people coming in, check IDs, break up fights, and remove people who got out of hand, while maintaining a professional and friendly manner. There was a man that started coming into the bar on the off nights, Wednesday or Thursday when it was slow. He would come in both nights one week, then not come in again for about 3 weeks or so. Then he would do the same thing always on the off nights. Usually he would talk to me a couple of times throughout the night when he was there, just normal small talk stuff. It was never awkward. He was always well dressed in a suit or at least a button-up shirt and slacks. He was clean-cut, had an athletic build, no visible tattoos or piercings, and a shaved head. I'm not into men, but I would guess he was a good-looking man in his late 30s. Well, the last night I saw him, the conversation was a bit different. He came in on an off night like normal, and eventually came up to talk to me by the door. The conversation started off normal, but eventually he asked me if I enjoyed what I did at the bar. I did the typical, "It's not that bad, it's mostly easy," dissembling that I felt was polite conversation. He asked me how long I planned to be a bouncer, asked if I thought I made enough money, and eventually dragged out of me that, no, I didn't particularly enjoy being a bouncer, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my future. At this point, he looked me straight in the face and said, "Well, you could kill people." While maintaining eye contact, I paused and waited for some type of joke or smile or something that would turn this into a failed attempt at a joke. No, nothing. He seemed 100% serious. There was no smile, no joke, nothing but him staring at me, waiting for me to respond. At this point, I told him the first thing that came to mind. "I'm pretty sure I don't have the skill set for what I think you're suggesting." He said, "Yeah, but you could learn all that. Think about it. You could travel, work once or twice a month, and get paid really well." While strangely, at that point in my life, it was an intriguing idea, I immediately thought of some sort of police setup and all the shadowy hitman handler betrayal I've seen in every hitman movie ever. I told him, "No, I don't think that's for me." He then said, "Okay," and left. I worked there for another year and never saw him again. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have a scary story you'd like me to read on the channel, please send me an email or post it to my subreddit. You can find details of this in the video description. It's the stories that make this, and this is the best way to ensure variety in the stories I share. Thank you all for listening.